Sarah Mitchell never imagined that her biggest battle wouldn't be in the classroom with energetic third graders, but in the staff room with grown women who should have known better. What started as workplace jealousy escalated into an assault that would change everything at Oakwood Elementary School forever. When three veteran teachers cornered the new teacher and took scissors to her beautiful auburn hair, they had no idea they were messing with someone who had survived 2 military deployments and possessed skills that could end careers with a single phone call. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The crisp October morning air carried the scent of fallen leaves as Sarah Mitchell pulled into the faculty parking lot of Oakwood Elementary School. At 28, she possessed the kind of quiet confidence that came from having faced real challenges. Though her colleagues knew nothing about her 4 years as an Army medic or the 2 deployments that had shaped her into someone who could remain calm under the most intense pressure. To them, she was simply the new third-grade teacher with the beautiful auburn curls and the soft-spoken demeanor who had somehow managed to win over both students and parents in just 6 weeks. Sarah's hair was her one vanity, cascading in loose waves past her shoulders when freed from the neat bun she wore during school hours. After years of military buzz cuts, growing it out had been a personal journey of reclaiming her feminine identity while transitioning back to civilian life. She took pride in her professional appearance, always arriving at school impeccably dressed in modest blouses and tailored slacks that commanded respect without being flashy. What her new colleagues didn't realize was that beneath Sarah's gentle exterior lay the disciplined mind of someone trained to assess threats, manage crises, and, when absolutely necessary, neutralize dangers with swift and decisive action. Her military training had taught her that the most effective warriors were often those who appeared least threatening, and Sarah had perfected the art of blending into her environment while remaining constantly aware of everything happening around her. The halls of Oakwood Elementary buzzed with the familiar energy of a school day beginning. Children's laughter echoed from the playground as buses arrived in steady succession. Sarah greeted her students with genuine warmth, helping them settle into their morning routines while keeping one ear tuned to the adult dynamics playing out beyond her classroom walls. In her 6 weeks at the school, she had quickly learned that the elementary school social hierarchy was every bit as complex and potentially vicious as any military unit she had served with. Except here the weapons were gossip, exclusion, and professional sabotage. Jennifer Walsh ruled the 5th grade hallway with the kind of authority that came from 8 years of seniority and a husband who sat on the school board. At 35, Jennifer had grown comfortable in her role as the unofficial leader of the veteran teachers, the one who decided which new faculty members would be welcomed into the inner circle and which would be left to struggle alone. Her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer clothes sent a clear message about her status, and she expected deference from anyone who hoped to survive at Oakwood Elementary. Jennifer's domain extended beyond her classroom through a network of allies who served her interests with unwavering loyalty. Lisa Chen, the 2nd-grade teacher, acted as Jennifer's primary lieutenant, always ready to spread carefully crafted information or exclude targeted individuals from social gatherings. Amanda Brooks, the school secretary, served as Jennifer's eyes and ears, monitoring all communications and ensuring that Jennifer always knew exactly what was happening in every corner of the building. The established order at Oakwood Elementary was clear. New teachers were expected to pay their dues, defer to veteran staff, and slowly earn their place in the hierarchy through years of careful political maneuvering. Sarah's rapid success with both students and parents had upset this delicate balance, creating ripples of resentment that were growing stronger each day. The first crack in Sarah's professional armor had appeared during the 3rd week of school, when her class achieved the highest reading scores in the building on the monthly assessment. Jennifer's 5th graders had held that distinction for 3 consecutive years, and losing it to a brand new teacher felt like a direct challenge to her authority. When Sarah was asked to share her teaching strategies at the next faculty meeting, Jennifer's smile never wavered, but her eyes revealed a coldness that Sarah recognized from her military days as the look of someone planning retaliation. The campaign against Sarah began subtly, as these things often do. Jennifer would accidentally forget to include Sarah in email chains about important school events. Lisa would organize coffee runs for the grade-level team but somehow overlook inviting Sarah. Amanda would delay processing Sarah's supply requests or claim that important messages had never been received. Each slight was small enough to be explained away as an oversight, but together they created a pattern of professional isolation that would have broken a less resilient person. Sarah endured the passive aggression with the same stoic patience she had learned during her military service. She had faced enemy fire and life-or-death medical emergencies. She could certainly handle petty workplace politics. Her training had taught her to observe, analyze, and respond only when absolutely necessary. Every slight was noted and filed away, but she refused to give her tormentors the satisfaction of seeing her react. The parents of Sarah's students began to take notice of their children's enthusiasm for school. Reading levels improved dramatically, behavioral problems decreased, and the daily reports home were filled with excitement about classroom activities. When parent-teacher conferences arrived in early October, Sarah's schedule was completely booked, while other teachers struggled to fill their appointment slots. The praise was genuine and heartfelt, but in the toxic environment that Jennifer had cultivated, Sarah's success felt like a deliberate attack on everyone else's competence. Principal David Thompson was the kind of administrator who valued peace above all else. In his 10 years at Oakwood Elementary, he had learned that the easiest path was to avoid confrontation and hope that problems would resolve themselves. When concerned parents began asking why other teachers couldn't achieve the same results as Ms. Mitchell, Thompson deflected their questions, rather than addressing the growing tension among his staff. His weakness created a power vacuum that Jennifer was more than happy to fill. The breaking point arrived on a gray Friday afternoon in mid-October. The monthly faculty meeting had run longer than usual, and most teachers had already left for the weekend when Sarah returned to the staff room to retrieve her coffee mug. The room was cramped and poorly ventilated, with mismatched furniture that had been donated over the years and fluorescent lighting that cast harsh shadows across every surface. Sarah was alone, or so she thought, when Jennifer, Lisa, and Amanda entered together with expressions that immediately put her on alert. Military training had taught Sarah to trust her instincts, and every alarm bell in her mind was suddenly ringing. The way they positioned themselves blocking the only exit, the coordinated timing of their arrival, the predatory gleam in Jennifer's eyes, all indicated that this was not a chance encounter. Sarah's body automatically shifted into a defensive posture, her weight balanced, and her hands free, while her expression remained calm and professional. Jennifer approached with the kind of false friendliness that Sarah had learned to recognize as a prelude to violence. Her smile was too wide, her voice too sweet, and her movements too deliberate. Behind her, Lisa held up her phone, already recording, while Amanda positioned herself to block any attempt at escape. They had planned this carefully, Sarah realized, probably for weeks. The conversation began innocuously enough, with Jennifer commenting on Sarah's hair and how lovely it looked when worn down. The compliments felt wrong, like a predator circling its prey, and Sarah's military instinct screamed at her to be ready for anything. When Jennifer reached into her purse and produced a pair of craft scissors, Sarah understood immediately what was about to happen. The attack came without warning. Lisa grabbed Sarah's arms from behind while Jennifer lunged forward with the scissors, aiming for the carefully maintained bun that Sarah wore as a symbol of her professionalism. Amanda continued filming, already composing the narrative that would paint this assault as a harmless prank between colleagues. They had underestimated their target completely. Sarah's response was swift and controlled. Years of combat training kicked in as she used Lisa's own momentum against her, breaking free from the awkward grip and stepping aside as Jennifer stumbled forward with the scissors. The weapon clattered to the floor as Sarah's hand closed around Jennifer's wrist, with precisely the right amount of pressure to cause pain without permanent damage. The veteran teacher gasped in shock and fear as she realized that the quiet new teacher was far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. Amanda stopped filming, her phone trembling in her hands as she watched Sarah maintain perfect control while Jennifer struggled uselessly against a grip that felt like steel. Lisa backed away, suddenly understanding that they had made a terrible miscalculation. The woman they had assumed was weak and vulnerable was revealing herself to be someone who could end this confrontation in seconds if she chose to escalate. Sarah's voice remained calm and professional as she addressed her would-be attackers. She explained that what they had just attempted was assault, that it was being recorded, and that their actions would have consequences far beyond anything they had imagined. Jennifer's face went white as she realized that her position, her husband's political connections, and her years of accumulated influence might not be enough to protect her from the storm she had just unleashed. The transformation in Sarah was visible to anyone who knew how to look. The meek newcomer was gone, replaced by someone who commanded the room through sheer presence and barely contained power. Her military bearing became apparent in the way she stood, the authority in her voice, and the calculating look in her eyes as she assessed the situation and planned her next moves. Robert Martinez, the retired principal who now worked as a substitute teacher, arrived at the staff room door just as Sarah was releasing Jennifer's wrist. At 65, Bob had spent 30 years in education and 20 years before that in the Marine Corps, and he recognized immediately what he was seeing. The positioning of the people in the room, the scissors on the floor, the fear in the three women's faces, and the controlled intensity radiating from Sarah told him everything he needed to know about what had just transpired. Bob had served 2 tours in Vietnam before becoming an educator, and he understood the unique challenges faced by veterans transitioning to civilian careers. He had suspected from their first conversation that Sarah's military background ran deeper than she had revealed, and now he was seeing confirmation of skills that went far beyond basic service. The way she held herself, the precision of her movements, and the tactical awareness she displayed marked her as someone who had seen real combat and emerged stronger for it. The confrontation in the staff room lasted only minutes, but its effects would ripple through Oakwood Elementary for months to come. Sarah made it clear that while she preferred to resolve conflicts through peaceful means, she was more than capable of protecting herself when necessary. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Jennifer, Lisa, and Amanda left the staff room shaken and confused, their carefully planned attack having backfired spectacularly. Word of the incident spread quickly through the small faculty, carried by whispers and speculation about what had really happened in the staff room that Friday afternoon. Some teachers claimed that Sarah had overreacted to a harmless prank, while others began to share their own stories of Jennifer's bullying behavior and the toxic environment she had created. The carefully maintained facade of collegiality was cracking, revealing years of accumulated resentment and fear. Sarah spent the weekend reflecting on the events of Friday afternoon and the path forward. Her military training had prepared her for many challenges, but navigating workplace politics while maintaining her professional integrity required a different kind of strategy. She knew that Jennifer would not let this incident pass without retaliation, and that the real battle for the soul of Oakwood Elementary was just beginning. Monday morning arrived with an unseasonable chill in the air, as if the weather itself sensed the tension building within the school walls. Sarah arrived early, as was her custom, but instead of the usual quiet hallways, she found clusters of teachers engaged in hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when she passed. The weekend had given everyone time to choose sides, and the battle lines were becoming clear. Jennifer had spent the weekend working her network of contacts, crafting a narrative that painted Sarah as an unstable newcomer who had physically threatened veteran staff members. Her husband's position on the school board provided access to influential parents and community leaders, and she was already spreading carefully worded warnings about the, quote, concerning behavior of the new third-grade teacher. The Monday morning faculty meeting was scheduled for 7:30, 30 minutes before students arrived, and Sarah knew it would be a crucial test of the alliances and loyalties that had been forming over the weekend. As she entered the library where meetings were held, she could feel the weight of dozens of eyes upon her, some curious, some hostile, but all waiting to see how she would handle the pressure. Principal Thompson opened the meeting with nervous energy, clearly uncomfortable with the tension that had infected his normally peaceful school. He attempted to address the misunderstanding that had occurred on Friday without taking sides or assigning blame, but his weak leadership only made the situation worse. Jennifer saw his hesitation as an opportunity to seize control of the narrative. Rising from her seat with practiced authority, Jennifer addressed the room with the kind of righteous indignation that had served her well in previous conflicts. She spoke of feeling unsafe in her own workplace, of being physically intimidated by someone who claimed to be a professional educator, and of the need to protect the school community from potentially dangerous individuals. Her performance was masterful, hitting all the right notes to generate sympathy and support from teachers who had their own reasons to fear change. Sarah listened to the accusations without responding, her military training helping her remain calm while she analyzed the tactical situation. Jennifer was skilled at manipulating emotions and controlling narratives, but she had made a critical error in underestimating both Sarah's capabilities and the intelligence of their colleagues. Several teachers had already approached Sarah privately to share their own experiences with Jennifer's bullying, and the support network she had been building quietly over the past 6 weeks was about to become visible. Maria Santos, the kindergarten teacher, was the first to speak up in Sarah's defense. In her 15 years at Oakwood Elementary, she had watched Jennifer destroy the careers of 3 previous teachers through similar campaigns of harassment and intimidation. Her voice shook slightly as she described her own experiences with Jennifer's cruelty, but her courage in speaking up gave others permission to share their stories. One by one, teachers began to reveal the toxic culture that Jennifer had created through years of careful manipulation. Stories emerged of supply budgets deliberately sabotaged, of professional development opportunities withheld, and of new teachers driven from the profession through systematic isolation and abuse. Frank Williams, the custodian who had worked at the school for 20 years, finally broke his silence about the incidents he had witnessed and the complaints he had heard from teachers too afraid to speak up officially. The tide in the room was turning, but Sarah knew that Jennifer still held significant power and would not surrender without a fight. The veteran teacher's face had grown progressively redder as colleague after colleague exposed her behavior, and Sarah recognized the signs of someone who was about to escalate the conflict to a dangerous new level. The explosion came without warning. Jennifer launched into a vitriolic attack on Sarah's character, her qualifications, and her right to teach at Oakwood Elementary. The mask of professionalism finally slipped completely, revealing the cruel and vindictive person who had been hiding behind a facade of authority for years. She demanded that Principal Thompson take immediate action to remove Sarah from the school before she could cause further disruption to the established order. Sarah's response was measured and precise. She stood slowly, allowing her full height and military bearing to become apparent to everyone in the room. When she spoke, her voice carried the kind of quiet authority that came from leading soldiers in life-and-death situations. She addressed Jennifer's accusations point by point, providing documentation for every claim and offering evidence that contradicted the carefully constructed lies. The revelation of Sarah's military background came as a shock to many of her colleagues, but it explained the competence and composure she had displayed since arriving at Oakwood Elementary. She spoke briefly about her service as an Army medic, the leadership training she had received, and the crisis management skills that had prepared her for challenges far more serious than workplace bullying. The room fell silent as Sarah finished speaking, the weight of her words and the authority behind them leaving little room for argument. Jennifer's attempt to control the narrative had backfired completely, exposing her own behavior while highlighting the strength and integrity of the woman she had tried to destroy. The aftermath of Monday's faculty meeting rippled through Oakwood Elementary like a stone thrown into still water. By Tuesday morning, the entire school buzzed with whispered conversations and sideways glances. Sarah arrived to find her classroom door decorated with anonymous notes of support from colleagues who had finally found the courage to speak their truth. Hidden beneath the colorful fall decorations were small tokens of solidarity from teachers who had suffered in silence for years under Jennifer's reign of intimidation. Principal Thompson's office became a revolving door of concerned staff members, each sharing their own experiences with the toxic culture that had festered within the school's walls. The weak administrator found himself overwhelmed by testimonies he had willfully ignored for years, forced to confront the reality that his avoidance of conflict had enabled systematic abuse of his faculty. His hands shook as he reviewed the growing stack of written complaints, each one documenting incidents that should have resulted in immediate disciplinary action. Jennifer's response to the exposure of her behavior was swift and vicious. Unable to attack Sarah directly after the embarrassing failure in the staff room, she turned her attention to destroying the support network that had formed around the new teacher. Lisa Chen found herself tasked with spreading rumors about Sarah's military service, suggesting that someone with combat training had no business working with young children. The Whisper campaign painted Sarah as potentially dangerous, unstable, and unfit for the classroom environment. The attack on Sarah's military background was a miscalculation that revealed just how little Jennifer understood about the community she claimed to represent. Millbrook, Tennessee was home to numerous military families and veterans who took great pride in their service to the country. When word spread that someone was questioning a veteran's fitness to teach based solely on their military experience, the backlash was immediate and fierce. Robert Martinez became an unexpected ally in ways that Jennifer never anticipated. The retired principal's own Marine Corps service had taught him to recognize both authentic leadership and toxic manipulation. During his substitute teaching rounds, he began sharing carefully chosen stories about the qualities that made Sarah an exceptional educator. His reputation for integrity and decades of respected service in the community gave his words significant weight with parents and school board members alike. The first parent complaint against Jennifer arrived on Wednesday morning, filed by the mother of a student who had witnessed one of the Secretary Amanda Brooks's attempts to sabotage Sarah's supply orders. The parent had overheard Amanda telling another mother that Ms. Mitchell was too military for elementary education, and the comment had triggered memories of her own husband's struggle to find employment after returning from deployment overseas. The formal complaint detailed not only Amanda's inappropriate comments, but also observations about the hostile work environment that seemed to target the newest faculty member. Sarah maintained her professional composure throughout the escalating drama, focusing her energy on the students who filled her classroom each day with eager anticipation for learning. Her military training had taught her that the best response to political attacks was consistent excellence in performance, and she channeled her frustration into creating innovative lessons that captivated her third graders' imagination. The children responded to her calm authority and genuine care with the kind of academic progress that made other teachers question their own methods. The second major confrontation occurred in the teacher's lounge on Thursday afternoon. Sarah was grading papers during her lunch break when Jennifer cornered her with a new strategy designed to force a public breakdown. Instead of direct aggression, Jennifer employed psychological warfare, making subtle comments about Sarah's appearance, her teaching methods, and her ability to relate to the community's values. Each remark was carefully crafted to appear supportive while actually being deeply insulting. The performance was witnessed by several teachers who had remained neutral in the growing conflict, and Jennifer's manipulative tactics became transparent to anyone paying attention. Her fake concern about Sarah's adjustment to civilian life was particularly galling, delivered with the kind of patronizing tone usually reserved for addressing small children. The veteran teacher clearly expected Sarah to lose her temper and provide ammunition for claims about her instability. Sarah's response demonstrated the kind of emotional control that came from years of high-stress military service. She acknowledged Jennifer's comments with polite professionalism while internally cataloging each attempted manipulation for future reference. Her calm demeanor in the face of obvious provocation impressed the watching teachers and further undermined Jennifer's credibility. The contrast between Jennifer's barely concealed hostility and Sarah's unshakable composure spoke volumes about their respective characters. Frank Williams, the custodian who had worked at Oakwood Elementary for 2 decades, finally decided to break his policy of staying out of staff conflicts. That evening, he approached Sarah in the parking lot as she loaded her car with materials for the next day's lessons. His weathered face showed the strain of years of witnessing workplace abuse while feeling powerless to intervene. Frank's son had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, and he understood the unique challenges faced by veterans transitioning to civilian careers. The conversation with Frank revealed the extent of Jennifer's campaign against previous teachers who had dared to challenge her authority. He described systematic efforts to undermine competent educators who threatened the established order, including manipulation of supplies, sabotage of classroom equipment, and coordination with certain parents to file false complaints. The pattern of behavior painted a picture of someone who viewed the school as her personal kingdom and treated any perceived challenge as an act of war. Frank's testimony proved crucial in ways that would become apparent later. As the only staff member who had access to all areas of the building at all hours, he had witnessed conversations and incidents that the participants assumed were private. His detailed knowledge of Jennifer's methods provided Sarah with valuable intelligence about potential future attacks and helped her prepare defensive strategies. The Friday before the final confrontation brought an unexpected development that would shift the balance of power decisively in Sarah's favor. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, the district superintendent, arrived at Oakwood Elementary for what was announced as a routine evaluation visit. In reality, the superintendent had received multiple calls from concerned parents and community members about the toxic work environment at the school. Her reputation for thorough investigation and zero tolerance for workplace harassment preceded her arrival. Dr. Hendricks was a former Army officer herself, having served as a military intelligence analyst before transitioning to education. Her approach to investigating workplace conflicts was methodical and comprehensive, drawing on skills developed during her military service. She spent the day conducting individual interviews with faculty members, reviewing documentation, and observing classroom interactions with the kind of attention to detail that made concealment impossible. The superintendent's interview with Sarah revealed the full scope of the harassment campaign and the attempted assault in the staff room. Dr. Hendricks was particularly interested in Sarah's military background and the specific skills that had enabled her to de-escalate what could have been a violent confrontation. The conversation between two veterans carried an understanding that civilian educators couldn't fully comprehend, built on shared experiences of leadership under pressure and commitment to protecting those under their care. Jennifer's interview with the superintendent did not go as smoothly as she had anticipated. Dr. Hendricks asked pointed questions about specific incidents that had been reported, requesting documentation and witnesses for claims that Jennifer had assumed would never be investigated. The veteran teacher's usual charm and political connections proved ineffective against an investigator who was immune to manipulation and focused solely on facts and evidence. The weekend following Dr. Hendricks' visit was a time of nervous anticipation throughout the school community. Parents who had heard rumors about conflicts among the faculty began asking direct questions about their children's educational environment. The school board received multiple calls requesting information about the investigation and expressing concern about the stability of the teaching staff. Jennifer's husband found his position on the board becoming a liability rather than an asset, as public attention focused on potential favoritism and corruption. Sarah used the quiet weekend to reflect on the events of the past month and prepare for whatever consequences would follow the superintendent's investigation. Her military experience had taught her that periods of apparent calm often preceded significant action, and she wanted to be ready for any outcome. The support she had received from unexpected sources had been encouraging, but she understood that real change would require more than just individual courage. The decisive moment arrived on Monday morning when Dr. Hendricks returned to Oakwood Elementary with a team of district administrators and human resources personnel. The presence of official investigators sent a clear message that this was not a routine follow-up visit but a formal intervention in the school's dysfunctional culture. Principal Thompson's nervous energy reached new heights as he realized that his leadership was being evaluated along with the behavior of his staff. The investigation team spent the morning reviewing documentation, interviewing additional witnesses, and examining physical evidence, including the security camera footage from the hallways around the staff room. The systematic approach to fact-gathering demonstrated the serious nature of the allegations and the district's commitment to uncovering the truth, regardless of political implications. Amanda Brooks was the first to crack under professional questioning. The secretary's role in enabling Jennifer's harassment campaign became clear, as investigators reviewed communication records and interviewed parents who had received inappropriate information about school personnel. Her admission that she had been secretly recording and photographing staff members for Jennifer's use constituted a clear violation of privacy policies and potentially criminal behavior. Lisa Chen's position became untenable when multiple teachers provided testimony about her participation in the harassment campaign. The second-grade teacher's attempts to distance herself from Jennifer's more extreme actions fell apart when confronted with documented evidence of her complicity. Her claim that she had been following orders rather than acting on personal malice only highlighted the extent to which Jennifer had corrupted the school's professional environment. The final confrontation between Sarah and Jennifer took place in Principal Thompson's office with Dr. Hendricks and a human resources representative present as witnesses. Jennifer made one last attempt to control the narrative, accusing Sarah of orchestrating a conspiracy against veteran teachers and threatening the traditional values of the school community. Her desperation was evident in the increasingly wild accusations and the complete abandonment of any pretense of professionalism. Sarah's response was a masterclass in military-trained composure and tactical thinking. She addressed each accusation with documented facts, provided witness testimony to support her claims, and demonstrated the kind of leadership that had been conspicuously absent from the school's administration. Her presentation of evidence was methodical and overwhelming, leaving no room for doubt about the systematic nature of the harassment she had endured. The revelation of Jennifer's attempt to physically assault Sarah in the staff room shocked even the experienced investigators. The combination of witness testimony, physical evidence, and Jennifer's own incriminating statements painted a picture of someone who had completely lost perspective on appropriate professional behavior. The fact that the assault had been planned and recorded made it impossible to dismiss as a momentary lapse in judgment. Dr. Hendrick's announcement of the investigation's findings and recommended actions came like a thunderclap through the school community. Jennifer Walsh was immediately suspended, pending a formal disciplinary hearing that would likely result in termination and possible criminal charges. Amanda Brooks faced similar consequences for her role in enabling and documenting the harassment. Lisa Chen received a formal reprimand and mandatory counseling, with her continued employment contingent on demonstrating genuine change in behavior. Principal Thompson's fate was sealed by his failure to address the toxic environment despite multiple opportunities and clear warning signs. His removal from the position was announced simultaneously with the other disciplinary actions, sending a clear message that leadership failures would not be tolerated. The district's decision to promote Robert Martinez to interim principal brought immediate credibility to the reform effort and signaled a new direction for Oakwood Elementary. The transformation in the school's culture was immediate and dramatic. Teachers who had been afraid to speak up for years suddenly found their voices, sharing ideas and collaborating in ways that had been impossible under Jennifer's regime. The atmosphere of fear and suspicion that had poisoned professional relationships began to dissipate as staff members realized they were free to focus on education rather than political survival. Sarah's role in the transformation was acknowledged but not celebrated in the way some expected. Her military training had taught her that the most effective leaders often worked behind the scenes, enabling others to succeed rather than seeking personal recognition. She continued to focus on her students and her classroom, letting her teaching excellence speak for itself while supporting colleagues who were still adjusting to the new environment. The ripple effects of the changes at Oakwood Elementary extended far beyond the school itself. Other schools in the district began examining their own cultures more carefully, looking for signs of similar toxic dynamics that might have been overlooked. The superintendent's office received inquiries from education professionals in neighboring districts who wanted to understand how such a comprehensive investigation and intervention had been conducted. Parents who had been concerned about the school environment expressed relief and gratitude for the decisive action taken to protect both students and teachers. The transparency of the investigation process and the thoroughness of the reforms helped rebuild trust in the institution and its leadership. Property values in the school district actually increased as families recognized the quality of education and professional environment that had emerged from the crisis. Jennifer's downfall became a cautionary tale that spread throughout the regional education community. Her attempt to destroy a decorated veteran's career had backfired spectacularly, resulting in the exposure of years of abusive behavior and the end of her own professional trajectory. The criminal charges filed against her for assault ensured that her actions would have consequences far beyond the loss of her teaching position. The new equilibrium at Oakwood Elementary represented more than just the resolution of a workplace conflict. It demonstrated the power of individual courage to catalyze systemic change and the importance of protecting those who stand up to institutional bullying. Sarah's quiet strength and professional integrity had not only saved her own career but had transformed an entire school community for the better. As the school year progressed, the improvements in academic performance and school culture became impossible to ignore. Test scores rose across all grade levels as teachers felt free to implement innovative methods without fear of political retribution. Student behavior improved as the adults in the building modeled respectful professional relationships. The toxic environment that had characterized Oakwood Elementary for years was replaced by a collaborative culture focused on educational excellence. 3 months after the investigation concluded, Sarah Mitchell stood before her classroom of third graders as they eagerly presented their science fair projects to visiting parents and community members. The transformation was remarkable not just in the children's academic achievements, but in the entire atmosphere of Oakwood Elementary. Where tension and fear had once permeated the hallways, genuine collaboration and enthusiasm for learning now flourished under the steady leadership of Principal Martinez. The science fair represented more than just an educational milestone. It was a symbol of the school's rebirth, showcasing the kind of innovative teaching that had been suppressed under the previous toxic regime. Sarah's students demonstrated experiments they had designed themselves, their confidence and curiosity reflecting the supportive environment that had emerged once fear was removed from the equation. Parents who attended marveled at the dramatic change in their children's attitudes toward school and learning. Dr. Patricia Hendricks made a point of attending the science fair, not as an investigator this time, but as a superintendent, celebrating the remarkable turnaround at one of her district schools. Her conversation with Sarah revealed the broader impact of the changes at Oakwood Elementary. Other schools in the district had begun implementing similar cultural reforms, using the successful transformation as a model for addressing their own workplace issues. The ripple effects extended beyond the immediate school community. The state education department had taken notice of the dramatic improvements in test scores, attendance rates, and teacher retention at Oakwood Elementary. Sarah found herself invited to speak at education conferences about creating inclusive learning environments and the unique perspectives that military veterans brought to civilian teaching positions. Meanwhile, the legal consequences for Jennifer Walsh continued to unfold in ways that reinforced the seriousness of workplace harassment and assault. The criminal charges had progressed through the court system with methodical precision, each hearing revealing new details about the systematic nature of her abusive behavior. The prosecution had built an overwhelming case, using testimony from multiple victims, documentary evidence, and the recorded footage of the attempted assault. Jennifer's attempts to minimize her actions and blame others for the toxic environment had failed spectacularly in court. Her lawyer's strategy of portraying her as a dedicated educator who had simply been misunderstood crumbled when faced with years of documented evidence and witness testimony. The judge's final sentencing included not only legal penalties, but also a permanent ban from working in any educational capacity within the state. Amanda Brooks faced her own reckoning as the full extent of her surveillance and information-gathering activities came to light during the investigation. The secretary had maintained detailed files on staff members, including personal information that she had no legitimate reason to possess. Her violation of privacy laws resulted in both criminal charges and a civil lawsuit filed by multiple teachers, whose personal lives had been illegally monitored and weaponized against them. Lisa Chen's journey toward redemption proved more complex and ultimately more hopeful than her former accomplices. The mandatory counseling sessions had forced her to confront the ways in which she had enabled and participated in the harassment campaign. Her gradual acknowledgement of responsibility and genuine efforts to make amends earned her a second chance, though her probationary status would continue for the remainder of the school year. The healing process for the school community required more than just removing the perpetrators of abuse. Principal Martinez understood that years of toxic culture could not be erased overnight, and he implemented comprehensive programs designed to rebuild trust and establish new patterns of professional interaction. Regular faculty meetings now included open forums for addressing concerns, peer mediation training, and collaborative planning sessions that encouraged innovation rather than conformity. Sarah's role in the ongoing transformation was both visible and carefully measured. Her military background, once seen as a potential liability by some, was now recognized as a valuable asset in creating the kind of disciplined yet supportive environment that allowed both teachers and students to thrive. She volunteered to lead professional development sessions on conflict resolution and crisis management, sharing skills that proved invaluable to her colleagues. The mentorship relationship between Sarah and Principal Martinez deepened as they worked together to establish new policies and procedures that would prevent future abuse. Their shared military experience created a foundation of mutual respect and understanding that translated into effective leadership throughout the school. Veterans' perspectives on teamwork, accountability, and mission-focused collaboration became integral to the school's new operational philosophy. One of the most significant changes at Oakwood Elementary was the establishment of a peer support network for new teachers. Sarah worked with several veteran educators who had remained silent during Jennifer's reign to create a comprehensive orientation program that addressed not just curriculum requirements but also the social and political dynamics of the school environment. New faculty members would never again face the isolation and targeting that Sarah had endured. The transformation extended to the student body as well. Children who had sensed the tension and dysfunction among the adults in their lives began to exhibit more positive behaviors as the school environment stabilized. Disciplinary incidents decreased dramatically, academic performance improved across all grade levels, and parent satisfaction surveys reached unprecedented heights. The correlation between adult workplace health and student outcomes became impossible to ignore. Community support for the changes at Oakwood Elementary grew stronger as the positive results became apparent. Local businesses began partnering with the school on educational initiatives. recognizing the value of investing in an institution that had demonstrated its commitment to excellence and integrity. The school's reputation spread beyond Millbrook, attracting attention from education professionals who wanted to understand how such a comprehensive transformation had been achieved. Sarah's students from that pivotal year would later remember her not just as an exceptional teacher, but as someone who had shown them the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it requires courage and sacrifice. The lessons they learned about integrity, perseverance, and the power of individual action to create positive change would influence their own choices throughout their lives. The broader education community took notice of the Oakwood Elementary success story, leading to invitations for Sarah to participate in state-level initiatives focused on improving school culture and supporting military veterans and education careers. Her presentations at professional conferences emphasized the importance of recognizing and addressing workplace harassment before it could poison entire institutional environments. Dr. Hendricks used the Oakwood Elementary case study in her doctoral dissertation on organizational change in educational institutions. The research documented the specific steps that had been taken to identify, investigate, and remediate a toxic workplace culture, providing a roadmap for other administrators facing similar challenges. The study became required reading in several university education leadership programs. The legal ramifications of the case extended beyond individual punishments to systemic changes in how the district handled workplace harassment complaints. New policies required immediate investigation of all allegations, mandatory reporting of suspected abuse, and regular climate assessments to identify problems before they could escalate. The transparency and accountability measures implemented as a result of the Oakwood Elementary investigation became a model for other school districts. Sarah's personal growth throughout the ordeal had been profound. The shy, careful new teacher who had arrived at Oakwood Elementary, seeking only to blend in and avoid conflict, had evolved into a confident leader who understood the responsibility that came with her skills and experience. Her military training had prepared her for many challenges, but learning to navigate civilian workplace politics while maintaining her integrity had required developing new capabilities. The support network that had formed around Sarah during the crisis became a lasting source of professional and personal relationships. Teachers like Maria Santos, who had found the courage to speak up during the investigation, became close friends and collaborators. The bonds forged in adversity created a foundation for ongoing cooperation and mutual support that strengthened the entire school community. Frank Williams, the custodian whose testimony had been crucial to the investigation, found himself elevated to a new role as building operations coordinator. His decades of institutional knowledge and his courage in speaking truth to power earned him the respect and gratitude of the entire faculty. The recognition of his contributions sent a clear message that every member of the school community had value and voice. The anniversary of the staff room incident passed quietly, marked not by commemoration of conflict, but by celebration of progress. Sarah's short, professionally styled hair had grown out during the intervening months, but she chose to maintain the shorter cut that had emerged from that traumatic afternoon. It had become a symbol, not of victimization, but of transformation and empowerment. Parents, who had initially been concerned about hiring a teacher with military background, now sought out Sarah's classroom for their children. The waiting list for her third-grade class grew longer each year, as word spread about the exceptional education and nurturing environment she provided. Her reputation for creating confident, capable students who were prepared not just academically but emotionally for future challenges made her one of the most requested teachers in the district. The impact on student achievement was measurable and sustained. Standardized test scores at Oakwood Elementary rose to among the highest in the state, but more importantly, assessments of social-emotional learning showed dramatic improvements in children's ability to work collaboratively, resolve conflicts peacefully, and support their peers. The culture of respect and inclusion that had been established among the adults was successfully transmitted to the student population. Teacher retention at Oakwood Elementary, which had been a chronic problem during Jennifer's tenure, improved dramatically as word spread throughout the education community about the positive working environment. Talented educators who had avoided the school because of its reputation now actively sought positions there. The competitive hiring process allowed Principal Martinez to select faculty members who shared the school's commitment to collaboration and excellence. The success story attracted attention from researchers studying workplace bullying and organizational psychology. Sarah participated in several studies examining the long-term effects of harassment on educational environments, and the factors that enabled some individuals to resist and ultimately overcome systematic abuse. Her insights contributed to a growing body of knowledge about resilience and leadership under pressure. Professional development opportunities that had once been carefully controlled and limited by Jennifer's clique were now freely available to all faculty members. Sarah took advantage of advanced training in trauma-informed teaching practices, understanding that her own experience with workplace harassment had given her unique insights into how stress and fear affected learning. These skills proved invaluable not only in her own classroom, but in mentoring other teachers facing similar challenges. The school's success created a positive feedback loop that attracted additional resources and support from the community. Local foundations provided grants for innovative programs, parent volunteers contributed countless hours of service, and business partnerships provided real-world learning opportunities for students. The transformation from a troubled institution to a model of excellence had been swift and comprehensive. Sarah's influence extended beyond Oakwood Elementary through her growing involvement in veteran support organizations. She began speaking at military transition seminars about the opportunities available in education careers and the unique advantages that military experience provided in civilian leadership roles. Her success story inspired other veterans to consider teaching as a meaningful way to continue their service to community and country. The legal precedent set by the Jennifer Walsh case had implications far beyond Millbrook, Tennessee. Employment lawyers began citing the case in other harassment situations, emphasizing the serious consequences that could result from workplace bullying and the importance of immediate intervention when problems were identified. The comprehensive nature of the investigation and the severity of the penalties served as a deterrent to similar behavior in other institutions. Dr. Hendricks was promoted to a state-level position, partly based on her handling of the Oakwood Elementary situation. Her methodical approach to investigation and her commitment to systemic change rather than superficial solutions had impressed education officials throughout Tennessee. The policies and procedures she had implemented became models for statewide adoption. As Sarah reflected on the journey from that first day when she had simply wanted to teach children and make a positive difference, she understood that her true impact had extended far beyond her original aspirations. The courage she had shown in standing up to harassment had created opportunities for countless others to work and learn in environments free from fear and intimidation. The transformation of Oakwood Elementary stood as proof that institutional change was possible when individuals were willing to take risks for the greater good. Sarah's military background had provided her with the skills and resilience necessary to endure the conflict, but it was her commitment to education and her care for her students that had motivated her to persevere when retreat might have been easier. The story continued to inspire others facing similar challenges in their own workplaces and communities. Sarah received letters from teachers, parents, and students who had heard about her experience and found encouragement to address their own situations rather than accepting abuse as inevitable. The ripple effects of her courage continued to spread, creating positive change in places she would never see, but whose transformation she had helped make possible. 2 years had passed since the incident that forever changed Oakwood Elementary, and Sarah Mitchell found herself standing at the podium of the Tennessee State Education Conference, addressing an audience of over 800 educators, administrators, and policymakers. The woman who had once preferred invisibility now commanded the stage with the quiet authority that had been forged through fire and emerged stronger than steel. Her presentation on creating cultures of courage, how military leadership principles transform educational environments, drew standing ovations and requests for consultation from districts across multiple states. The irony was not lost on Sarah that her greatest professional triumph had emerged from what could have been her most devastating defeat. The attempted humiliation in the staff room that was meant to break her spirit had instead revealed strengths she hadn't known she possessed and opened doors to opportunities she had never imagined. The short auburn hair that had once been a symbol of violation now framed a face that radiated confidence and purpose. Back in Millbrook, the transformation of Oakwood Elementary had become legendary throughout the education community. The school that had once been whispered about as a place where good teachers went to have their careers destroyed was now celebrated as a model of excellence and innovation. Visiting educators made pilgrimages to observe the collaborative culture and systematic approaches to student success that had emerged from the ashes of the old toxic environment. Principal Martinez had been officially appointed to the permanent position after his interim year demonstrated the kind of transformational leadership the district desperately needed. His military background in partnership with Sarah had created an administrative model that balanced high expectations with genuine support for both students and faculty. The veteran principal's office was now a place where teachers felt comfortable bringing innovative ideas and honest concerns rather than a fortress to be avoided at all costs. The legal aftermath of Jennifer Walsh's case had sent shockwaves through educational institutions across Tennessee and beyond. Her criminal conviction for assault and the substantial civil judgments against both her and the school district for allowing the harassment to continue had established precedents that fundamentally changed how workplace complaints were handled. Insurance companies now required specific anti-harassment training and rapid response protocols as conditions of coverage for educational institutions. Jennifer herself had disappeared from public view after serving her sentence and paying the court-ordered restitution to Sarah and other victims. Attempts by reporters to locate her for follow-up stories had been unsuccessful, though rumors suggested she had moved to another state and was working in a field completely unrelated to education. The woman who had once wielded power through fear and intimidation had learned that actions carried consequences that could not be avoided through political connections or social manipulation. Amanda Brooks faced a different kind of reckoning that proved equally comprehensive. The criminal charges for illegal surveillance and privacy violations had resulted in significant fines and community service, but the civil lawsuit filed by multiple teachers had been financially devastating. Her collection of secret recordings and detailed personal files on staff members had violated both state and federal privacy laws, creating liability that extended far beyond her ability to pay. The case had become a cautionary tale used in legal education programs about the serious consequences of workplace surveillance and intimidation. Lisa Chen's path to redemption had been arduous but ultimately successful. The mandatory counseling and anger management programs had forced her to confront the insecurity and fear that had driven her to participate in Jennifer's harassment campaign. Her genuine efforts to make amends, including public apologies and volunteer work with anti-bullying organizations, had gradually rebuilt trust with her colleagues. The second-grade teacher had become an advocate for bystander intervention training, using her own experience as an example of how good people could be led astray by toxic leadership. The peer support network for new teachers that Sarah had helped establish had evolved into a comprehensive mentorship program that was being replicated in school districts throughout the region. First-year educators were paired not only with experienced teachers but also with counselors trained to recognize signs of workplace harassment and provide resources for addressing problems before they escalated. The program's success in improving teacher retention and job satisfaction had attracted funding from both state education departments and private foundations. Sarah's own career trajectory had exceeded every expectation she had held when she first entered civilian education. In addition to her teaching responsibilities, she had been appointed as the district's Director of Professional Culture and Development, a newly created position that reflected the growing recognition of workplace environment as a critical factor in educational success. Her role involved consulting with schools experiencing cultural problems and training administrators in conflict resolution and team building. The Military Veterans Transition Program that Sarah had begun informally had grown into a statewide initiative supported by both the Tennessee Department of Education and the Department of Veterans Affairs. Military personnel approaching retirement or separation from service could now participate in comprehensive programs that prepared them for education careers while helping school districts understand the unique value that veterans brought to teaching and administration. Dr. Patricia Hendricks had leveraged her success with the Oakwood Elementary intervention into a position as the state's Deputy Commissioner of Education, where she oversaw initiatives focused on school culture and workplace safety. Her doctoral research on organizational transformation in educational institutions had been published as a book that became required reading in graduate education programs. The systematic approach to identifying and addressing toxic workplace cultures that she had developed was now being implemented in school districts across multiple states. The students who had been in Sarah's classroom during that transformative year were now in middle school, carrying with them lessons about courage, integrity, and standing up for what is right that would influence their choices throughout their lives. Many had maintained contact with their former teacher, sharing stories about how they applied the problem-solving skills and confidence she had helped them develop. Their academic achievements and social development continued to exceed expectations, demonstrating the lasting impact of quality education delivered in a supportive environment. The community of Millbrook had embraced Sarah as one of their own, recognizing that her courage in confronting workplace harassment had improved not just the school, but the entire town's reputation. Property values in the school district had increased significantly as families specifically sought to move to an area known for educational excellence and professional integrity. Local businesses competed to sponsor school programs and events, understanding that supporting quality education was an investment in the community's future. The ripple effects of the transformation at Oakwood Elementary continued to spread in unexpected ways. Teachers who had been inspired by Sarah's example had gone on to take leadership roles in other schools, carrying with them the principles of collaborative culture and zero tolerance for harassment. The network of educators who had been touched by the Oakwood Elementary story became a force for positive change throughout the region's educational system. Sarah's relationship with her military mentor, Robert Martinez, had deepened into a genuine friendship and professional partnership that extended beyond their shared service at Oakwood Elementary. Together, they had developed training programs that helped other veteran educators navigate the unique challenges of transitioning from military to civilian leadership roles. Their collaboration had been featured in military transition publications and education journals as a model for successful career change and mentorship. The insurance industry had taken notice of the Oakwood Elementary case and its implications for liability and risk management in educational institutions. Sarah found herself consulting with insurance companies and legal firms about developing policies and procedures that could prevent similar situations from occurring. Her unique perspective as both victim and ultimate victor in a workplace harassment case provided valuable insights into effective prevention and intervention strategies. Media attention to the story had been carefully managed by Sarah, who understood the difference between sharing her experience to help others and exploiting it for personal gain. She had declined numerous requests for sensationalized interviews, while accepting opportunities to speak at professional conferences and participate in educational programming that could make a positive difference. The balance between maintaining privacy and using her platform responsibly reflected the leadership principles she had learned during her military service. The formal recognition of Sarah's contributions to education came in the form of the Tennessee Teacher of the Year Award, an honor that reflected not just her classroom excellence but her broader impact on the profession. The award ceremony included testimonials from colleagues, students, and administrators who had been influenced by her example of courage and integrity. Her acceptance speech focused not on her personal achievements but on the collective responsibility of educators to create environments where all students and staff could thrive. Frank Williams, the custodian whose testimony had been crucial to the investigation, had become something of a local celebrity in his own right. His courage in speaking up after years of silent observation had inspired other support staff members to understand their importance in creating positive school cultures. The building operations coordinator position he now held included responsibilities for monitoring and reporting signs of workplace dysfunction, ensuring that problems would be identified and addressed before they could escalate. The policy changes implemented at the district level as a result of the Oakwood Elementary investigation had created a template that was being adopted by school systems across the country. The comprehensive approach to workplace harassment prevention included regular climate surveys, mandatory reporting training, rapid response protocols, and support services for both victims and witnesses. The success of these measures in preventing similar incidents had attracted attention from federal education officials who were considering national implementation. Sarah's students continued to benefit from the skills and perspective she brought to education, but they were no longer the only ones. Her leadership of professional development programs had influenced hundreds of educators who carried her methods and philosophy back to their own classrooms and schools. The multiplication effect of quality teaching and positive culture change continued to expand, touching thousands of students who would never know the original source of the improvements in their educational experience. The legal precedent established by the Jennifer Walsh case had been cited in harassment cases throughout Tennessee and neighboring states, strengthening protections for workers in all industries. Employment attorneys now use the case as an example of how thorough investigation and appropriate consequences could deter similar behavior while providing justice for victims. The comprehensive nature of the evidence gathering and the severity of the penalties had become a standard reference point for similar cases. The healing process for the school community had been gradual but complete, with former divisions replaced by genuine collaboration and mutual support. Teachers who had once been afraid to share innovative ideas now competed to present new approaches at faculty meetings. The culture of fear and competition had been replaced by one of continuous improvement and collective success, creating an environment where both students and staff could reach their full potential. As Sarah looked toward the future, she understood that her true legacy would not be measured in awards or recognition, but in the lives she had influenced and the positive changes she had helped create. The shy new teacher, who had arrived at Oakwood Elementary seeking only to make a small difference, had discovered that individual courage, when combined with integrity and perseverance, could transform entire communities and create lasting positive change. The story of what happened in that staff room on a gray October afternoon had become more than just an account of workplace harassment and its consequences. It had evolved into a testament to the power of standing up for what is right, the importance of institutional accountability, and the remarkable transformation that becomes possible when toxic cultures are replaced with environments built on respect, collaboration, and shared commitment to excellence. The woman who had once hidden behind long hair and oversized sweaters now stood as a beacon of hope for anyone facing similar challenges in their own workplaces and communities. Sarah Mitchell had learned that sometimes the most powerful thing a person could do was simply refuse to be a victim, and in doing so, she had given others permission to find their own courage and create their own positive change. The transformation was complete, but the story continued to inspire new chapters in the lives of everyone it touched. From the students who learned that adults could be trusted to do the right thing, to the teachers who discovered their own voices and strength, to the administrators who understood that true leadership required moral courage as well as administrative skill, the ripple effects of one person's refusal to accept harassment would continue to spread for generations to come. 5 years after the incident that changed everything, Sarah Mitchell stood in the entrance hall of the brand-new Oakwood Elementary School building, watching as construction workers installed the final piece of the dedication plaque. The gleaming facility represented more than architectural advancement. It symbolized the complete transformation of an institution that had risen from the ashes of its toxic past to become a beacon of educational excellence recognized throughout the southeastern United States. The decision to build an entirely new school had come after enrollment doubled due to families relocating specifically to access the exceptional education now available in Millbrook. The old building, while renovated multiple times, simply could not accommodate the influx of students whose parents had heard about the miraculous turnaround and the teacher who had sparked it all. Sarah's name was etched into the dedication plaque not as the primary honoree but as part of a comprehensive recognition of all those who had contributed to the school's rebirth. The grand opening ceremony attracted visitors from across the region, including education officials, policymakers, and media representatives who wanted to document the culmination of one of the most remarkable school transformation stories in recent memory. Sarah found herself once again in the spotlight, though she had learned to navigate public attention with the same grace and purpose that had characterized her entire approach to the challenges she had faced. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, now serving as the State Commissioner of Education, delivered the keynote address that placed the Oakwood Elementary success story in the broader context of statewide education reform. Her speech detailed how the systematic approaches to workplace culture and conflict resolution pioneered at the school had been implemented across Tennessee and were being studied by education departments in 12 other states. The ripple effects of the transformation continued to expand in ways that none of the original participants could have imagined. The new building incorporated design elements specifically intended to support the collaborative culture that had emerged from the school's rebirth. Open common areas encouraged interaction between grade levels, transparent classroom walls promoted accountability and shared learning, and flexible spaces allowed for the innovative teaching methods that had become the school's hallmark. Every aspect of the architecture reflected the principles of openness, collaboration, and excellence that had replaced the secrecy and fear of the previous era. Principal Martinez, now recognized as one of the most effective school leaders in the state, had overseen the transition to the new facility while maintaining the culture of excellence that had made the move necessary. His leadership during the construction period had been masterful, keeping staff and students focused on their educational mission while managing the complex logistics of building a new school. The partnership between his administrative expertise and Sarah's instructional leadership had become a model studied in graduate education programs. The teaching staff at the new Oakwood Elementary represented a carefully selected group of educators who had been chosen not just for their academic credentials, but for their commitment to the collaborative principles that defined the school's culture. Many were veterans of the original transformation who had grown professionally through the experience, while others were newcomers attracted by the school's reputation and eager to contribute to its continued success. Sarah's role had evolved once again, this time to Assistant Superintendent for Instructional Excellence, a position created specifically to leverage her unique combination of classroom expertise, leadership experience, and institutional knowledge. Her responsibilities included oversight of curriculum development across the district, mentoring of new administrators, and consultation with other districts seeking to replicate the Oakwood Elementary success story. The students who had been present during the original crisis were now high school seniors, their academic achievements and personal development serving as living testimony to the power of quality education delivered in a supportive environment. College acceptance rates among this cohort exceeded 90%, with many receiving scholarships specifically citing their leadership skills and community involvement. The lessons they had learned about courage, integrity, and standing up for what is right had influenced their choices throughout their educational journey. The broader community of Millbrook had been transformed along with the school, evolving from a small town with limited opportunities into a thriving community that attracted young families and businesses seeking to be part of something special. The population had grown by 40% in 5 years, bringing economic vitality and cultural diversity that enriched the entire region. The school had become the crown jewel of the community, its success drawing investment and attention that benefited everyone. The legal ramifications of the original case continued to influence employment law and educational policy at the national level. The Jennifer Walsh precedent had been cited in congressional hearings on workplace harassment and had contributed to the development of federal guidelines for investigating and addressing toxic workplace cultures. Law schools now included the case in their curriculum as an example of how comprehensive evidence gathering and appropriate consequences could create lasting institutional change. Jennifer Walsh herself had never publicly acknowledged the harm she had caused or expressed genuine remorse for her actions. Reports suggested she had struggled to find stable employment after her conviction, with background checks revealing her criminal record and termination from her teaching position. The woman who had once wielded power through fear and intimidation had learned that reputation, once destroyed, was nearly impossible to rebuild. Amanda Brooks had taken a different path, following her conviction and civil judgment. The former secretary had relocated to another state and was working as a retail manager while slowly paying off the debt incurred from the lawsuit. Her participation in a documentary about workplace harassment had included what appeared to be genuine acknowledgement of her role in enabling the toxic culture, though her motivations for speaking publicly remained unclear. Lisa Chen's journey of redemption had culminated in her appointment as the district's Director of New Teacher Support, a position that allowed her to use her experience as both perpetrator and reformed ally to help prevent similar situations from occurring. Her work with first-year educators included honest discussions about the pressures that could lead good people to make poor choices and the importance of speaking up when witnessing inappropriate behavior. The military veterans transition program that Sarah had helped establish had grown into a national model supported by the Department of Defense and the Department of Education. Thousands of former service members had successfully transitioned into education careers through the program, bringing their leadership skills and life experience to classrooms across the country. The success rate of veterans in teaching positions had proven significantly higher than the general population, validating Sarah's belief in the value of military experience in education. Frank Williams had become something of a folk hero in his own right, his story of finding courage after decades of silence inspiring others to speak up when they witnessed wrongdoing. The custodian-turned-building operations coordinator had been featured in several publications about the importance of every voice in creating positive workplace cultures. His retirement ceremony had drawn hundreds of attendees who wanted to honor his contribution to the school's transformation. The research conducted on the Oakwood Elementary transformation had contributed to a growing body of knowledge about organizational change and the factors that enabled institutions to overcome toxic cultures. Sarah had participated in multiple longitudinal studies that tracked the long-term effects of the intervention, providing valuable data for scholars studying workplace harassment, leadership development, and institutional resilience. The insurance industry had completely restructured its approach to educational institution coverage based on lessons learned from the Oakwood Elementary case. Policies now required comprehensive harassment prevention training, regular culture assessments, and rapid response protocols for addressing complaints. The financial cost of allowing toxic cultures to develop had been clearly demonstrated, leading to more proactive approaches to risk management. Sarah's influence on education policy had extended beyond Tennessee to the national level, where she served on federal advisory committees and contributed to the development of guidelines for creating positive school cultures. Her testimony before Congress on the connection between workplace environment and student achievement had been instrumental in securing funding for culture improvement initiatives in schools across the country. The peer support network for new teachers had evolved into a comprehensive professional development system that was being implemented in hundreds of school districts. The program's success in improving teacher retention and job satisfaction had attracted significant funding from both government and private sources, allowing for expansion and refinement of the services provided to beginning educators. The technology integration at the new Oakwood Elementary reflected the school's commitment to innovation and excellence. Smart boards, tablets for every student, and high-speed internet connectivity supported teaching methods that engaged students in ways that would have been impossible in the old building. The seamless integration of technology into the curriculum demonstrated how physical infrastructure could support pedagogical innovation. Sarah's personal life had flourished alongside her professional success. Her marriage to a fellow veteran she had met through the transition program had been celebrated by the entire school community, with students and colleagues contributing to a wedding that felt like a community celebration. The couple's decision to settle permanently in Millbrook represented their commitment to the community that had supported Sarah's transformation from victim to leader. The awards and recognition that had accumulated over the years reflected not just Sarah's individual achievements, but the collective success of everyone who had contributed to the school's transformation. The Presidential Award for Excellence in Education, the National Teacher of the Year recognition, and numerous other honors had brought positive attention to both Sarah and the community that had supported her journey. The documentary film about the Oakwood Elementary transformation had premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and had been distributed to schools across the country as a training tool for addressing workplace harassment and building positive cultures. Sarah had been hesitant about participating in the film, but her decision to share her story had helped countless others find the courage to address similar situations in their own workplaces. The speaking engagements that had initially been a source of anxiety for Sarah had evolved into opportunities to share practical strategies for creating positive change in educational institutions. Her presentations at international conferences had influenced policymakers and educators around the world, demonstrating how individual courage could catalyze systemic transformation. The mentorship relationships that Sarah had developed with other educators facing similar challenges had created a network of support that extended across multiple states and countries. The informal association of Courage educators had grown to include hundreds of teachers, administrators, and support staff who were committed to creating positive workplace cultures and supporting colleagues facing harassment or intimidation. The scholarship program established in Sarah's name provided financial support for military veterans pursuing education careers, ensuring that her impact would continue to multiply through future generations of teacher leaders. The recipients of the scholarships carried forward not just the financial support but the values and principles that had guided Sarah's own transformation from victim to victor. The research center housed in the new Oakwood Elementary building focused on studying effective practices in school culture and leadership development. Scholars from universities across the region conducted studies on the factors that had contributed to the school's success, generating knowledge that would inform future transformation efforts in other institutions. As Sarah walked through the halls of the new building, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from that terrifying afternoon in the staff room to this moment of celebration and recognition. The woman who had once hidden behind long hair and oversized sweaters had become a leader whose influence extended far beyond the classroom or even the school building. The children's laughter echoing through the halls reminded her of the true purpose behind all the struggle and transformation. Every policy change, every legal precedent, every award and recognition ultimately served the goal of creating environments where students could learn and grow without fear, supported by adults who modeled courage, integrity, and mutual respect. The legacy of that October afternoon 5 years earlier would continue to influence educational institutions for generations to come. The systematic approach to identifying and addressing toxic cultures had become standard practice in many districts. The legal precedents had strengthened protections for workers across all industries. The transformation of Oakwood Elementary had proven that positive change was possible, even in the most challenging circumstances. Sarah understood that her story was ultimately not about her individual triumph, but about the collective power of communities to support positive change and hold institutions accountable for their treatment of both employees and students. The courage she had found in that moment of crisis had inspired others to find their own strength and create their own transformations. The new Oakwood Elementary stood as a monument to the principle that toxic cultures could be overcome, that individuals could make a difference, and that institutions could change for the better when good people were willing to take risks for the greater good. The building would serve students for decades to come, but the values and principles that had guided its creation would influence generations of educators and leaders who would carry the lessons forward to new challenges and opportunities. The dedication ceremony concluded with the unveiling of the school's new motto, chosen by the students themselves: "Courage creates change." The simple phrase captured the essence of the transformation that had brought them to this moment, and the ongoing commitment to creating positive environments where everyone could thrive. Sarah smiled as she read the words, knowing that they represented not just the school's values but the universal truth that had guided her journey from victim to victor to leader. As the celebration continued around her, Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction and purpose. The journey had been difficult and painful at times, but it had led to something beautiful and lasting. The new Oakwood Elementary would serve as a beacon of hope for anyone facing similar challenges, proving that with courage, integrity, and community support, even the most entrenched problems could be overcome and transformed into opportunities for positive change. 10 years had passed since that fateful October afternoon when scissors were raised in anger and a quiet teacher's world changed forever. Sarah Mitchell Rodriguez stood at the podium of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization headquarters in Paris, addressing delegates from 47 countries about the global impact of workplace culture on educational outcomes. Her auburn hair, now threaded with silver and worn in a confident shoulder-length style, caught the light as she spoke with the authority of someone who had not only survived institutional abuse, but had transformed it into a catalyst for worldwide change. The audience before her represented education ministers, policymakers, and reform advocates from every continent, all gathered to discuss the implementation of what had become known as the Millbrook Protocols for addressing toxic workplace cultures in educational institutions. The comprehensive framework that had emerged from the transformation of a small Tennessee elementary school was now being adopted by school systems from Finland to Singapore, from Brazil to South Africa. The journey to this moment had been extraordinary in ways that Sarah could never have imagined during those dark days when she had feared for her career and her safety. The shy military veteran who had simply wanted to teach children and make a modest difference had become one of the most influential voices in global education reform. Her story had transcended the boundaries of a single incident to become a symbol of how individual courage could spark systemic transformation on an international scale. The research institute that bore her name, the Sarah Mitchell Center for Educational Workplace Excellence, had been established through a partnership between the University of Tennessee, the Department of Defense, and the United Nations Educational Division. The center's mission focused on identifying and addressing toxic cultures in educational institutions worldwide, with particular emphasis on supporting military veterans transitioning to civilian education careers. The facility employed over 200 researchers, policy analysts, and program coordinators who worked to replicate the success achieved at Oakwood Elementary in schools across the globe. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, now serving as the Deputy Director General of UNESCO, had invited Sarah to address the Assembly as part of a broader initiative to establish international standards for educational workplace environments. The former Tennessee educator's rise through the ranks of educational leadership had been meteoric, driven by her expertise in organizational transformation and her first-hand experience with the devastating effects of unchecked harassment and abuse. The Millbrook Protocols had been refined through implementation in over 3,000 schools across 32 countries, with remarkable consistency in outcomes. Schools that adopted the comprehensive approach to culture change reported significant improvements in teacher retention, student achievement, and community satisfaction. The economic benefits were equally impressive, with reduced turnover costs, lower insurance premiums, and increased property values in districts that successfully implemented the protocols. Sarah's presentation to the UNESCO Assembly included case studies from implementations in diverse cultural contexts, demonstrating the universal applicability of the principles that had emerged from her experience. A primary school in rural Kenya had used the protocols to address gender-based harassment of female teachers. An urban district in Mumbai had successfully transformed a culture of academic cheating and favoritism. A network of schools in Sao Paulo had eliminated the systematic exclusion of teachers from indigenous backgrounds. The international recognition of Sarah's work had brought unexpected opportunities and responsibilities. She had served as an advisor to the World Bank on education sector reform, consulted with the International Labor Organization on workplace harassment prevention, and contributed to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals related to quality education and decent work. Her influence extended far beyond the education sector, as the principles she had helped develop were being applied to healthcare systems, corporate environments, and government agencies. The documentary film about the Oakwood Elementary transformation had been translated into 23 languages and was being used as a training tool in universities and professional development programs worldwide. The film's impact had been particularly significant in countries where workplace harassment was endemic but rarely addressed, providing a roadmap for change that could be adapted to local contexts and cultural sensitivities. Sarah's personal life had flourished alongside her professional achievements. Her marriage to Miguel Rodriguez, a fellow Army veteran who had transitioned to a career in school counseling, had produced 2 children who were now attending the very school where their mother's journey had begun. 8-year-old Elena and 6-year-old David were thriving in an educational environment that embodied the principles their mother had fought to establish, surrounded by teachers who understood the importance of creating safe and supportive learning communities. The children's presence in the school served as a daily reminder of the long-term consequences of the choices made by adults in positions of authority. Elena, named after the protagonist of the story that had inspired the original YouTube video, displayed the same quiet confidence and fierce sense of justice that had characterized her mother's approach to confronting injustice. David's natural leadership abilities and compassion for others reflected the values that had guided the transformation of their school community. The original Oakwood Elementary building had been converted into a museum and training center dedicated to the history of educational reform and the ongoing fight against workplace harassment. Visitors from around the world came to see the staff room where the pivotal confrontation had occurred, now transformed into an interactive exhibit that helped people understand the dynamics of toxic workplace cultures and the strategies for addressing them effectively. Frank Williams, now in his 70s and officially retired, served as a volunteer guide at the museum, sharing his perspective on the events that had transformed the school and the broader community. His testimony about the importance of speaking up when witnessing inappropriate behavior had become one of the most powerful elements of the exhibit, inspiring countless visitors to find their own courage to address problems in their workplaces and communities. Principal Martinez had gone on to become the state's Director of School Leadership Development, using his experience at Oakwood Elementary to train a new generation of administrators in the principles of collaborative leadership and cultural transformation. His partnership with Sarah had evolved into a lifelong friendship and professional collaboration that continued to influence education policy at the state and national levels. The legal precedents established by the Jennifer Walsh case had been incorporated into employment law textbooks and were regularly cited in harassment cases across multiple industries. The comprehensive approach to evidence gathering and the severity of the consequences had deterred similar behavior in countless workplaces, while providing a clear framework for addressing violations when they did occur. Jennifer Walsh herself had never recovered from the destruction of her career and reputation. Reports from private investigators hired by documentary filmmakers suggested she had moved multiple times in the years following her conviction, struggling to find stable employment and maintain relationships. The woman who had once wielded power through fear and intimidation had become a cautionary tale about the ultimate consequences of unchecked abuse of authority. Amanda Brooks had taken a different path, eventually becoming an advocate for workplace harassment victims through her work with a nonprofit organization that provided legal and emotional support to those facing similar situations. Her transformation from enabler to ally had been gradual and sometimes painful, but her insights into the psychology of toxic workplace cultures had proven valuable in helping others understand and address these dynamics. Lisa Chen's work as Director of New Teacher Support had evolved into a statewide program that was being replicated in districts across the country. Her unique perspective as someone who had both participated in harassment and experienced genuine redemption provided credibility and hope to others seeking to change their behavior and make amends for past mistakes. The scholarship program established in Sarah's name had supported over 500 military veterans in their transition to education careers, with recipients now serving as teachers, administrators, and policymakers in schools across the United States and internationally. The program's success rate in producing effective educators had been remarkable, with many recipients going on to leadership positions where they could continue to promote positive workplace cultures. The research conducted at the Sarah Mitchell Center had contributed to a growing body of knowledge about organizational psychology, leadership development, and institutional change. The center's publications were required reading in graduate programs across multiple disciplines, and its training programs were sought after by organizations worldwide that were committed to creating positive and productive work environments. The technology platforms developed by the center had revolutionized how institutions monitored and addressed workplace culture issues. Anonymous reporting systems, real-time culture assessment tools, and predictive analytics for identifying potential problems before they escalated had been implemented in thousands of organizations, preventing countless incidents of harassment and abuse. Sarah's influence on international education policy had been recognized through numerous awards and honors, including the UNESCO Prize for Education, the Global Teacher Prize, and the International Leadership in Education Award. Each recognition had provided new opportunities to share her message and expand the reach of the principles she had helped develop. The speaking engagements that had once terrified Sarah had become opportunities to connect with educators and leaders around the world who were facing similar challenges in their own contexts. Her presentations at international conferences consistently drew standing-room-only audiences, and her books on educational leadership and workplace culture had been translated into dozens of languages. The mentorship network that had grown from Sarah's initial efforts to support new teachers had evolved into a global community of educators committed to creating positive change in their institutions. The annual conference of the International Network of Courage Educators brought together thousands of participants from around the world to share strategies, celebrate successes, and support each other in their ongoing efforts to transform educational environments. The children who had been students at Oakwood Elementary during the transformation were now adults, many of whom had chosen careers in education, law, and public service. Their experiences as witnesses to institutional change had shaped their understanding of leadership, justice, and the power of individual action to create positive outcomes. Several had returned to their alma mater as teachers, continuing the cycle of positive influence that Sarah had initiated. The community of Millbrook had been permanently transformed by the events that had begun in a small elementary school. The town's reputation for educational excellence and commitment to workplace integrity had attracted businesses, families, and investment that had revitalized the entire region. The local economy had grown by over 200% in the decade following the school's transformation, with much of the growth attributed to the community's reputation for ethical leadership and collaborative problem-solving. The insurance industry had completely restructured its approach to institutional liability based on the lessons learned from the Oakwood Elementary case. The financial costs of allowing toxic cultures to develop had been clearly demonstrated, leading to more proactive approaches to risk management and prevention. The industry's adoption of the Millbrook protocols had reduced harassment-related claims by over 60% in participating organizations. The federal legislation that had emerged from Sarah's congressional testimony had established national standards for addressing workplace harassment in educational institutions. The Sarah Mitchell Act required comprehensive reporting systems, mandatory training programs, and regular culture assessments in all schools receiving federal funding. The law had been hailed as a landmark achievement in protecting both educators and students from the devastating effects of toxic workplace cultures. As Sarah concluded her presentation to the UNESCO Assembly, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her from a small Tennessee town to the international stage. The woman who had once feared for her career and safety had become a global advocate for justice and positive change. Her story had inspired countless others to find their own courage and create their own transformations, multiplying the impact far beyond what any single person could have achieved alone. The standing ovation that followed her presentation was more than recognition of her individual achievements. It was acknowledgement of the universal truth that her experience had revealed. Toxic cultures could be transformed, institutions could change for the better, and individual courage could spark movements that reached across continents and cultures to create lasting positive change. As the delegates filed out of the assembly hall, many approached Sarah to discuss implementation strategies for their own countries and contexts. The conversations that followed would lead to new partnerships, new programs, and new opportunities to extend the principles of the Millbrook Protocols to educational institutions around the world. The ripple effects of that October afternoon in a small school staff room would continue to spread, touching the lives of students and educators in ways that could never be fully measured or quantified. The epilogue of Sarah's story was still being written, not just in her own life, but in the lives of everyone who had been influenced by her example. The quiet teacher who had refused to be a victim had become a catalyst for global change, proving that sometimes the most powerful thing a person could do was simply stand up for what was right and trust that others would find the courage to join them in creating a better world. The legacy of courage that had emerged from that moment of crisis would continue to inspire future generations of educators, leaders, and changemakers who would carry the principles forward to new challenges and opportunities. The transformation that had begun in a single school had become a movement that would shape the future of education and workplace culture for decades to come, ensuring that Sarah's story would never truly end, but would continue to evolve and inspire as long as people needed reminders of the power of individual courage to create positive change. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.